And we're rolling. Yeah, the ASMR shit. That's fucking.
Have you seen the Jeff Goldblum ASMR?
Yeah, yeah. This is to induce all your chills.
Yo ho, a pirate's life for me. That's right, me heart.
Life finds a way. Welcome to the pirate ship. We've got Anthony John Carnes.
Hello, it's good to be back.
Here, let's see if I
been
can
a
get that.
while.
Yeah, that's such a good looking shot. All right. And yeah, I kind of figured that would happen. Well, I lost my shot, so you guys are going to look all sexy with the close-ups.
Yeah.
Who has the best glare?
Who's the best glare? Probably you.
Thank you.
So we're here to talk about gender toxicity. Now,
Yes.
can you explain what gender toxicity is to the people that have no clue? Like
Okay,
you're
so
explaining it to a baby right now.
Gender toxicity is basically behaviors associated with gender. So the big buzzword would be like male toxicity. So like mansplaining or manspreading.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's one.
Yeah.
Locker room talk. Talking about some, broad you got drunk the other night and, had sex with in the back of your car. Shit
Okay.
like that.
Okay.
Also things
I've never
like...
done that. So. What's that like?
No. But also things like, men that can't show emotions, it's a sign of weakness.
Right,
or,
right.
Like, I was going to tell you earlier, like I was going to talk about my past. So like in school, when I was in elementary school, I was not the most athletic individual, which being athletic is considered to be a masculine trait.
Mm-hmm.
I was not that. People said I ran like a girl, threw like a girl, whatever that means.
Really?
To this day, I still don't understand that. I look at female athletes, I'm like, well, I wish I was as athletic as they were. I mean, but...
Could be Jewish, right?
It could be a Jew thing.
I mean, I just realized I'm 0.01% Jew from 23andMe.
I knew it.
And I'm super
You
excited.
paid for that?
Fuck, well, yeah, I didn't. No, April did.
Oh, no, it was like a
But it was pretty cool though, because and I knew
Yeah.
there had to have been some type of Jewish quality, even
Sure.
if it was 0.01%. I knew it had to be because I had the same thing. I'm not very athletic,
Well, yeah.
and it sucks. Like people could play football, they could play soccer,
Yeah.
and all. Like I vaguely remember being somewhat okay at soccer, but when I started developing, oh no,
Yeah,
no.
I was more into like music, the arts,
Mm-hmm.
and people look at that and like, oh, you fairy or what a fag.
Oh really? You got called?
Oh, I got called all kinds of things.
Was it in the gay connotation?
More demasculating. Is that a word? Demasculating?
Have you
Or
found that, like,
emasculating, I think is the word I'm looking for, yeah.
have you found the older you get, the more appreciation you get for your creativity side? Like,
I do, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, you get older and, I mean, no one cares at that point. But when you're
Right.
when you're in school, especially like elementary school, I mean, kids just talk shit. They don't know what they're talking
Yeah.
about. I mean, I was the last one that was picked at dodgeball. When I was playing baseball in school, they all like, hey, move up, shit like that. So it really wasn't working in my favor. My dad was, he's an old, what do you call it, like the old blood type of guy, slap on the ass in the corporate office, female secretary thing. So like when he realized that I wasn't like a man's man, didn't really rub him the right way. So that was difficult also growing up because he never really approved much of my taste for music and things like that.
Oh, that's a sad story,
Yeah.
man.
so where did you get your interest from it?
Probably my mom.
Yeah.
People like to make fun of millennials as being a generation of men raised by women, but I mean, she was an art. She showed me scary movies, music. She encouraged me to do like all these things, and I think mainly the reason why I was into that stuff was because I had 2 open heart surgeries, so I couldn't be athletic. I couldn't be running around, I couldn't, like wrestle with the other kids. I get tired, they'd
Right.
worry, I'd freak out. Like my brothers were, they were athletic. One was like in taekwondo, the other one was in wrestling, basketball. He did baseball. He did all that stuff outside of school. It was so bad in high school that I got to skip PE. Although there was 1 year, and I got stuck on a team of all women. And because I was a man, and so this is what really made me start thinking about the whole gender thing, because they were all like, well, because you're a man or a boy or whatever, you should be good at sports. So if you hear a woman say that, I don't think anyone would really think twice about that. But when you hear a man say, hey, you throw like a girl, people get upset. Like, hey, that's sexist.
Didn't that come from the Sandlot?
Probably.
You play ball
yeah,
like a
yeah. I
girl.
mean, yeah, exactly. You throw ball.
You know what
like
I'm talking
a
about?
girl.
I've seen the movie. Yeah.
So I mean, it goes both ways, and I'm hoping tonight can change people's minds that it's not just a gender-specific thing. Really, it's just people being assholes. I mean, you can attribute gender traits back and forth to like anything. So what I wanted to like start with was if we can pull up the board.
Yeah, definitely. Okay.
Nothing to do with being a man or a woman.
Yeah.
These are just arbitrary, made-up traits. Now, some of them, we could argue that's more type of like testosterone. It's like aggression. We'll start with that one. So aggression is very much linked with testosterone, and that's oh god, see if I can spell
What's the opposite of
Estrogen.
testosterone?
But
It's estrogen.
testosterone-
That was fast.
Aggression.
That was a real fast response.
Well, the opposite, I think, would
You know?
it would be estrogen, but we had a talk about that in an older episode. Oxytocin.
Yes.
I feel like
Yes.
that would maybe be more accurate.
We
Could
talking
be.
about the catalyst, or are we talking about the result?
That's a good question.
That's a great question.
You know,
Back to the board.
Yeah, we'll go to the board. So, okay, the first traditional trait, aggression. So, you know, males are typically seen as being aggressive, and that is associated with testosterone. So, like, you know, little boys and stuff in school, they're always beating on each other. You know, that's aggression, right? And so
Yeah, okay,
people tie that as a toxic trait to men.
Sure, I get that, but at the same time, the problem is if you look in nature,
Yeah.
like lions, for example, lions are they filled with testosterone, but they just lie around the entire time? That's probably why they're called lions. But the female lions are the hunters. They're the ones that are the aggressive ones, but they're aggressive for a specific purpose, which is to provide for the pride.
Right.
So it's really
Maintain
difficult.
the
Yeah,
pride.
And then they're
it's
protective.
It's difficult to
Males
start saying from a
provide, but-
humanistic standpoint that testosterone is associated with violence in the first place. So I don't know if I necessarily agree with that statement.
well, what I do agree with is the trait found in said, but it's also found in both.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think,
I mean,
yeah.
women do have testosterone as well.
Yeah,
Which, well, I mean, it creates
and some have even higher levels of
sure.
than male partners.
Well, what we're talking about and discussing is like the same concept of when a child's born, if it's a boy, it's supposed to play with the color blue. And it's supposed to
Right.
play with trucks and action figures.
Yeah, get dirty.
As
roll on
opposed
the-
to
yeah.
the child that's a female is supposed to play with Barbies and dolls and
No.
tea parties and love the color pink. So where the fuck does that come into play?
society, and that's what I
Yeah.
mean. Though, so like, masculine, feminine is it's language, and so we categorize these things based off of what we see, like our parents. So, my dad was into cars; he was a race car driver. So again, that's like something you could say is kind of stereotypically male, being into cars, fixing cars, guns. Again, like you said, hunting with the lions, even though female lions are the hunters and
Yeah.
male lions are just kind of there to make babies, I guess. I mean, what does a male lion really do other than lay around?
Fights off,
That's a good question.
fights off intruders.
Yeah, probably.
Do
they, though?
potential
Sometimes.
future mates.
Or just, yeah, exactly. Okay, so the other mates. So
What
not
else
really
do we do,
protecting
you know?
the tribe, but just defending his
his right,
reserve. Yeah, his right.
I guess.
All right, so the next one on the list would be, this one is, I think, more kind of an attitude, so assertiveness. Like, a man who takes charge, a man who gets things done.
John Wayne, man.
John Wayne, man, assertiveness.
John Wayne was actually afraid.
Okay.
No. That's a beautiful shot. John Wayne was afraid of his own shadow.
Was he?
Yes.
Was he superstitious?
Even though he was the man's man,
Yeah.
he said that he didn't, A, know who he was, and B, he was afraid of his own shadow. He was afraid of everything that also went around. So by portraying that character of John Wayne on screen, that was the overcompensation that he actually felt inside.
So he's a very insecure guy.
Very insecure, big time. And that's something you find extremely interesting with like people that are insecure that typically do traits or skill sets that overcompensate for that kind of idea.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's interesting.
I actually watched an interesting documentary the other night about Doc Holliday
Yeah, yeah.
and where he got his persona, how he created it, and like why. It's interesting. You should look it up.
What's it called?
It's the biography or story
The
of
story of Doc
Holliday.
Holliday?
Yeah.
All right.
So he had TB, tuberculosis. It was called a consumption back then, way back when, and they couldn't treat it. They didn't know how to or do anything. They don't know where it came from or why. And so he moved to Texas and then developed a persona of, you don't want to mess with this guy.
Right.
Purely because he felt weak physically.
Mm-hmm.
He was, afflicted. And he felt the insecurity through his physical issues to maintain this kind of persona of a badass gunslinging, gambling,
That's
womanizer, typical as you would find in the Wild West back in the day.
When I found comedy, that was the best part, was I could make fun of myself to not be that manly man.
Right.
And to not... April plays this game where she loves to scare me constantly. And when that happens, she gets the Judy chop. It'll be like, oh, put this up real quick. And she's like, oh, that's real intimidating. And I'm like, well, fuck, that's what you did. Like, what do you expect me to do?
You react.
And so, but I can get on stage and I can make fun of myself doing that and feel good about that, because at least it's in that forum where I can make fun of myself before somebody else gets to me first.
Yeah.
And I kind of feel like it's not that way, because it reminds me of being in school. Like, I got picked on a lot.
Yeah.
And when you get picked on, you feel helpless. Like, you just feel so fucking small. And then you feel like you're supposed to be something you're not, which is really interesting.
I think we all feel that way, though. I mean, again,
Perhaps.
Or at least experienced it growing up.
I mean, our society doesn't really
So
you've
you've got...
favor people with weakness. They don't like to see that. No one really wants to talk about that sort of thing. It's uncomfortable.
Because they don't want to deal with their own weaknesses.
No. They just project it onto others.
So
Or
we've
cover
got
it up.
aggression and assertiveness on the male side.
Right.
And then estrogen and
Passivity.
on the female side.
So with that, typically, like with the male-female stereotype, men are assertive, which means, they go out, like, you ask a girl out on a date, right? Whereas women, while passive, and I don't mean like, they'll just let things happen, but they're more, maybe receptive would be a better word. So receptive is also considered to be a traditional female trait. That's not to say that you can't flip these things. So far, you could flip these things interchangeably, and we see this on a day-to-day basis. I've met and encountered plenty of women who can beat the crap out of me, who are very aggressive,
Sure.
who are assertive, and I feel like assertiveness is something that you'd think everyone would want, right? A society that wants people to take charge, take the initiative, and how could you really label that as a male, or not a male, but like a masculine or feminine trait? Like, it just, again, it seems kind of silly. But it builds up that stereotype where, like, the man goes out to work, does all that shit, and then the woman has to stay home, build the home. Which, again, now you see, I think, more men staying at home, and women are like the breadwinners.
So men have gotten lazier.
Personally, I think so. There's definitely been some coddling in the male generation, but that's a whole different thing.
Well,
Again, it's societal.
yeah.
It
Well,
is,
when
absolutely.
when going back to the American dream, which is pretty much, I don't know if that's how the patriarchal system got started, but I definitely know that's where it was most prominent. Where you had the Leave It to Beaver concept. You had the father went out, did the job, made the money, the mother stayed home for the child.
Right.
But then also you didn't have technology back then, where we were just getting into that technological boom. And it makes sense because back then you got your news from the neighbor, or you got your news from the local supermarket, or things like that.
Or the
Gossip.
So it was so much more of a wholesome community concept.
Yeah, it was
to where
more local news. It wasn't like, hey, what's going on over in Europe or something
right.
like that. Yeah.
Which is also, it makes sense as far as like the male would protect the family by going out further and doing that dangerous job.
Discovering.
Yeah, exactly.
So it brings it back to the Neanderthal.
Yeah. It's like the hunting gathering concept all over again.
Instinctive responsibility.
Yeah.
I guess.
And then, I'm not trying to ruffle any feathers here.
No, you got to keep the tribe alive. So the man goes out. Women and children are top priority because they're the ones that carry the line. Men are expendable, right? So tough shit for us.
Absolutely.
We can be replaced, but the women and children cannot.
It's all about the bloodline.
It's all about the
Ultimately,
bloodline.
survival.
Well, then you get concepts like the Me Too movement, and then that shit just gets blown out of proportion. And I want to pull up a video real quick that I saw. I don't know if you guys heard or know what mansplaining is. Are we familiar
I do,
with
and
this?
before you play, I just want to say something about mansplaining.
Sure.
That fucking term, I had a friend, she told me that once that I was mansplaining her, and that really pissed me off. So, like,
Oh, I'm sorry, not mansplaining, manspreading. Sorry,
okay, we'll get to that
manspreading.
too, though, because I have something to say about that as well. But so
Okay.
the whole mansplaining thing, anyone with an opinion could mansplain. A woman, I've been mansplained by a woman. It's just someone being an asshole,
Yeah.
flexing, their pseudo intelligence, or maybe they think you're dumb or something, and have the need to lay it out for you, or they're talking at you, not to you. So
By definition-
anyone can do that. So I don't think that is exclusively a male thing. Like to say that.
Toddlers can talk at you.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's toxic. I would say that that's toxic.
And
To
ask my
say
brother.
that is a masculine
He's got
trait,
2 of 'em.
or that's a
His-
man
his
thing.
hand-
By
Yeah.
definition, mansplaining is the explanation of something typically by a man, typically to a woman,
Yeah.
regarded as
Sure.
condescending or patronizing. That whole regarded as is the
Yeah.
real caveat.
Right.
Because you can regard anything in a certain period of time or
Right.
frame or
So-
whatever you want to. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. So let me ask you this: so if it's the roles are reversed, is it womansplaining? Because I haven't seen that really on the internet.
Well, if
I
it's
haven't heard anyone
regarding
throw
the
that
same
word around.
definition but flipped, I would say.
I guess.
Yeah, sure.
But there's no need for it because, and we've talked about this beforehand, anytime you have some type of oppressive concept,
Yeah.
you're always going to get a backlash.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm going to play this real quick for you. Oh, hold on. All right.
Usually a bloke next to you is manspreading. Well, one Russian law student has found a new way to tackle the problem. She's begun splashing the groins of offending passengers with a mix of bleach and water. She
You
said,
could just use water.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
It's caustic. It's gonna hurt.
Bleach and water. Anyone know what bleach and water does?
Aside from ruining your pants,
I don't know. We have to. I
burns
should
your
have looked that
urethra.
up.
No, what does it do?
I think it's an acid.
Yeah, I mean, bleach on its own is an acid, right? I
So
mean, that's-
what we're talking about is a woman who's just going through and attacking men.
Yeah.
And let's explain this. You know what manspreading is, right?
I'm doing it right now.
Go ahead. Go ahead. Here, can you draw it out for everybody?
Wait, draw someone spreading a man
Sketch.
spreading his
Yeah.
legs.
Do the
Oh.
sketch of the man spreading.
Okay, let me
Well, it's
see
like
if
a
I can-
peacock, right?
she
How am I going to do this?
When I saw it, so I originally thought man spreading was preventing them from spreading their seed. That's what I thought it was. And I was like, well, it makes sense.
It
Some
does.
vigilante that's trying to say you shouldn't reproduce. But in the context, it's because of space. But if you actually do the research, there's a guy, he's a spinal neurosurgeon named John Sudif. He says the overall width of the pelvis is relatively greater in females, and the angle is more acute. And these factors could play a role in making a position of sitting with the knees close together less comfortable for men. So just the way we're actually made up.
You mean
Yeah, it's how the
giving
hips
us
are.
space
Not-
for our ball
That's
sacks?
the big
Yeah, yeah,
one.
it's like-
That's the
Yeah.
big one. Not to
just
mention
that.
the fact
it's
that
the hip structure from male to a female figure, they're very different.
Yeah,
right.
absolutely.
So the knees, when
And
at 90
that is a
degrees are
beautiful. That's a
perpendicular.
beautiful picture, by the way.
I think it's the
But
point
where's
across.
the female? I do that in bed on my own all the time.
This is a guy on a subway. This is the best I can do.
Oh, I thought that was a bed.
These are windows. No,
With 2 offshot
Yeah.
kind of pillows.
I have to work on
for-
my sketching
I don't
skills.
'Cause
Well,
it
I was gonna
looks
say
his
that, like,
hands
I
go,
mean,
like, back like this,
You know what?
Doesn't, so
A
everyone
person
can
could
immediately
sit there and take up
understand
space
which
like an
body
asshole and
part
spread their
controls
legs
the
further
behavior
than
of
necessary.
these men.
All they're doing, but they're not
Pretty
taking up
hardcore.
space
No, not at
from
all.
other
That's
people.
that's a normal
This
sitting
is
pose.
extreme.
Yeah,
This
that's
is
very extreme.
too
Far,
extreme.
It's our daily dilemma. And Benedict
I'm all
Yeah.
for activists, but
Yeah.
there's a time and place.
Well,
Yeah,
when you
absolutely.
start when you start going to the extreme level of things, it's an extremist. It's no longer, and that's in the words of terrorism and acts of terrorism
Yeah.
and violence and
Yeah, and
but
throwing
here's-
acid
but,
on
But
people.
here's where we go back to that concept of women tending to be less violent than men.
Sure.
But now with the Me Too movement and all these things that have started happening, the mansplaining, the man spreading, you're starting to see violent acts. You're starting to
Right.
see violent
It's
outbursts.
provoking people.
It is, but these people are misrepresenting a larger issue. So I mean, like the Me Too movement, I'm very much for and supporting. this person with the water bottle, no, that's fucking stupid. I mean, let's talk
Where do you
about
draw the
women
line?
with their purses who take up the space, right? Like that's the equivalent of manspreading.
Yes.
So I mean, again, it goes back to people just being dicks, not wanting to share their space.
Can't we just call it that?
But
it's why are we
just-
coming up with these terms?
But see what I'm
we're
saying?
isolating
But then-
certain
yeah.
sexes out of it.
Yeah, but now
just
someone's
call it what it is.
right,
You're
but-
being a
yeah.
dick. That's
Yeah.
all you were doing.
But see, no, that's toxic because now we're associating that with men, dicks. To be a
Oh,
dick,
okay.
It's like saying when
You're being an ick.
or you're
Careful,
being
Austin.
Yeah,
Okay.
or if you're being
Fuck
a bitch,
off.
You're
you
gonna
know,
provoke
you're
people.
basically saying, hey, you know, you're being woman-like, right? Quit being a bitch. So I can see where some people, you know, I can see where the contention is coming from. So again, it's a language thing.
It's
That's-
a dick thing. It's people being
People,
dicks.
yeah.
I
Just being-
think it's a
yeah.
lot, if we can circle back just a little bit to societal insecurities.
Yeah.
And this is why people don't want to see weakness in other individuals or in their community. So they say, "Oh, well, you gotta ship up or ship out.
Yeah,
Come
man up.
on, stand up straight, keep going, keep your chin up." Now, don't get me wrong; those sayings are inspirational and nurturing, but in the wrong context.
Absolutely.
You know, in the insecure context, coming from
It sends the wrong
speaker.
message.
Yeah. And I think if we can draw comparisons in that from individuals as, you know, parents, for example, all the way to societal leaders.
yeah.
So if they're insecure about something, but the people have, like, there's a niche group of people who are like, actually, we've got a movement here
Yeah.
Yeah.
because we feel it's worth bringing this to society and creating more peace.
Well, that's where you've always gotten protests. It's where you've always gotten people that outcry and say they don't want to take that anymore, and that they're gonna take a stand. I definitely see that. The problem that I see though, and that's like it's called toxicity,
Yeah.
is you can't really tell. And we're about to get into some gender concepts because I'll be honest. At first, I wasn't really okay with transgender, but that's because I just didn't understand it.
Sure.
And I'm just admitting like that was my personal bias and my
Ignorance.
ignorance by far. But the more I looked at it, I started kind of looking into exactly like the characteristics alone, and I started reading about how there was a female that went to a male, and in that transition period started adapting the same thing as far as a male characteristic, which is wouldn't be a great listener, was very self-indulgent, and so it's like that's really amazing because that
Started
show.
spreading, too. in the civilized-
Well, it's funny that I mean the whole manspreading thing is like typically a masculine trait is men take up space. You know, we're broad. You know, it's
Clumsy.
It's a
Then why are
masculine
they
thing.
called
Whereas
broads?
Ooh, good one.
language. it's
I'll get in trouble
semantics.
for it all the time. I don't give a shit.
No, not that kind of language, but semantics. So again, you know, people get caught up in the word and not really thinking about what the other person is saying.
Right.
The
So
context.
when you again like saying, you know, man up, it's like, and it plays on that insecurity because you know you got two different people here. One may not really understand what the other one means and takes it the wrong way or makes it a much bigger issue than it really is.
Fair. All right. So I like what you said. We take up space. I get that.
Well, yeah, posture. So like if you're all closed
It
in,
look like a vagina.
I mean that's one way to put it. Sure.
Just saying. That's what it looks
But
like.
you're seen as weak.
Okay.
And a lot of like you look at like a lot of like have you been to like an anime convention?
No.
So, like,
do I strike you the time?
Well,
that
no,
goes to
but you see
anime?
like a lot of dorky kids and like a lot more men and like they're like very closed and
Okay.
it shows their insecurities.
Right.
Whereas again that stereotype of man has
Now,
broad shoulder.
Let's
shoulders
talk about
back.
that
Again,
for a second.
what?
Body language is another way people communicate.
Yeah.
They always talk about like in an interview process, you're supposed to take up space. They even talk about if you're about to be attacked by a bear to start taking up space
Yeah.
because it shows some type of importance.
Strength.
So the question is,
Dominance.
if someone is displaying that, not trying to be a dick about it, but actually just that's who that person is, why should they get chastised?
Do
Okay,
they?
all right, moving
Do
on.
they?
I mean, yeah,
Do you, Austin?
Sometimes,
When you do
yeah.
that?
someone tell
My
you you're
big
taking up
ass
too much
head.
space.
Yeah, I'll be at a fucking hockey game and some guy's like, "Hey, big head." I'm like, well, that's what I do. My head's mansplaining or spreading or whatever.
God.
It's a problem when you have a big fucking noggin. Anyways, we're moving on.
Yeah, well, you mentioned the transgender thing, so why don't we talk about
Sure, okay.
that? So what have you learned?
So what I've learned is that deep down, I looked at it as like a Venn diagram. Here, can you draw a Venn diagram?
Is that the circles?
Those are the two. Those are the
Okay.
two overlapping circles. Draw a.
Wait, hold on.
I was gonna say it. Yeah, go ahead.
Or
You want one?
No, I'm
wait,
good,
hold
man.
on. I can change it to this.
All right, perfect. All right, so that concept. That's what I've learned as far as you got on the left side.
Now for my next trick.
Yeah. Let's say the left side's female.
Female?
I'm not going to be male dominated here. Left
Okay.
side's female
Sure.
and the right side's male.
Okay.
When I started looking at the transgendered concept,
Mm-hmm.
it really started making sense as far as it looks like things on like different spectrums.
Yeah. So I see it as like a line. So yeah, we got that line underneath.
Right. But I don't even look at it as like from a straight line perspective.
Well, masculine, feminine, somewhere
Sure,
in between.
but even
sure.
like
Yeah.
making it even more crazy, let's take the look at the left side, the female side,
Okay.
and say that half is like a clock. Okay, let's say the point starts at 11 o'clock on the circle, right?
So like right there.
Yeah, let's say right there.
Okay.
Then if you drew a straight line
Yeah.
from anywhere to that kind of point, you're going to get different distances. But that's also based on how you've made your map and how you made your
Sure.
your concept.
Okay.
And that's the way that I see us as in this weird kind of biological makeup.
Right.
And we're on these not just a spectrum where it's X and Y,
Right.
but it all
so it's
these
not binary.
not at all.
Okay.
There's a lot of
Nuance.
nuance of variables. There's
Degrees,
tons and tons
variables,
of
okay.
variables. And so when it starts is usually the biochemistry.
Yeah.
So the biochemistry is hugely important because when you start changing that biochemistry, now you're changing and moving into that middle ground is what I consider the transgender concept,
Right.
where it's I feel like I'm both, but I don't. But I need to make a decision. I need to
Right.
I need to be on one side of the spectrum.
Right, for the sake of identity.
Right.
Yeah.
So when I started researching this,
Yeah.
what was really interesting was transgenders that go from male to female tend to have it worse than female to male.
How so?
So when they actually get the full transgendered concept
Yeah.
and they are accepted, let's say they went from female to male, they're accepted in that way of what a male is in society.
Okay.
And that was extremely important, what I realized. Because that shows now that there is a patriarchal
Right.
disproportion that's going on.
The
It's a
expectations shifted.
It's a philosophical problem that we have, but anyone can do it if they really wanted to.
Yeah.
You just have to convince the other person that that's who you are.
Sure.
But now when you take it from the other side of the spectrum, you go male to female. Oh, we got a call real quick. Hello.
Hello.
Hey, what's up?
How's it going? I just got off work.
Did you? We're talking about
Yeah.
transgender going from male to female and female to male. And
Okay.
what we decided was going from female to male would be more beneficial, especially like in a workplace or if we're living in a patriarchal system in the
Well-
first place.
Hold up on that.
Okay.
Did you read that article I sent you about the female who transitioned to a male, and after a while he started talking about how he felt like his emotions weren't as important anymore to the people around him, that they're basically like, hey, you gotta man up, you're a man,
Right.
like the expectations shifted, so like that person had to be more assertive, that man had to if he didn't speak up, people look at him as weak or whatever like that. So like those stereotypes shifted. So like what's expected of a male in our society was now pushed onto that person, because the stereotype would be that when a woman's upset, people are like, oh well, what's wrong? But then when a man's upset, it's just kind of like, man, you got to get over it.
Well, okay.
These are stereotypes.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Let's hear it from a woman's
Okay.
perspective.
Well, I kind of see that, but then on the other hand, do you think a man is really caring as much about his emotions and what people are thinking about as much as a woman does?
No, I don't.
See, I don't.
I think
either.
some men do. I mean, it
I
goes,
think some
again,
men
back and
could
forth.
be more. We're on the phone with Georgia, by the way. He had to get himself another cup of Joe.
Hey, Georgia.
Hey,
How's
how's it going?
I do.
Good, how are you?
I do think
I'm
that
good. Good to hear
men
your voice.
men aren't as in touch with their feelings as females are,
Sure.
because that makes the female's a better nurturer at that point. And you have to have a dichotomy. If we live back in the hunting gathering concept, you have to have a nurturing side, and it doesn't necessarily just have to be a male.
Right.
And that's what we're talking about. We're no longer talking about the typical male anymore.
Okay.
We're just talking about the idea of what a male is supposed to be.
Okay.
But
The
if you,
responsibilities?
maybe the responsibilities or
There
the
we go. That's
environmental
a-
aspects
that was the word I
that
should
go
use.
on.
Okay.
Sure. So it's really what context you put it in.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you have a stay-at-home dad,
Yeah.
does he start getting all those necessary skills it would take to be a great nurturer, a great husband, a provider? And I just don't think.
Well, what
I
makes
don't-
a great nurturer? I mean,
Well,
I
there are
think a
three
man-
different
Well,
topics. you brought
breastfeeding
up.
for one.
Okay, it's biological though.
Okay.
Well, of
I mean,
course, the
there's
mother
just-
of,
sure.
of the species would have to do that, right?
Yeah.
Right,
Unless
but
we
you don't
get-
have to breastfeed.
I think. Okay, this is gonna sound like a leap. Okay.
Okay.
And I know I'm gonna get a lot of shit for this, but I think the reason when they say males don't have nipples or males' nipples are useless in the first place, they are not. Because if they ever want to be a female,
Fair.
But I think men can produce a small amount of milk if a baby keeps sucking on those nipples like day in, day out.
I think so too. I mean, I'm just saying.
They're not designed for it, but they have the
Okay.
maybe the option to.
They have the
But-
plumbing, not
But
necessarily.
if you introduce the estrogen and the
Yeah.
hormones,
that's
It
actually
has the
an
capability.
interesting-
that
Yeah.
it has the potential. We're making up words now.
Potentiality.
It has
We'll
the
go with that. Yeah, I like that.
potentiality.
Potential. Yes,
it has the potentiality for it to become an actual breast and for it to serve that function.
to just like X potential.
Sure.
Potentiality.
Potentiality. There we
Let's
go.
just replace the whole word.
So I get what I'm saying is I start looking at us more like stem cells.
Okay.
And as far as like we are malleable, we can actually change our biochemistry if we really wanted to. But the problem is this now. I can already tell like a lot of conservative people would be like, where does it stop from there? Now it's what you want to be a horse, you want to be a cow. Like where
Well, I
does it
mean,
stop?
maybe someday that we'll get to that point. I mean, gene therapy is becoming a big thing. They've done experiments on people who are full-grown adults, and they can change their DNA. So I mean,
That's true.
And just for those listening, this is not something that can happen in the morning. This would take generations,
Yeah.
Long
and
time.
generations, and generations
Absolutely.
of things. So
All right, getting back on task.
not all
Sorry.
crazy here.
Hey Georgia,
Yes.
can you describe times where you felt alienated or like in a toxic environment at your work? And remembering the HIPAA stuff.
Oh, let's see. That I have felt like I've been because of being a woman.
Yes. Like if you were a man in that circumstance, things would have been different.
You know, actually, that's kind of interesting because I am in a heavily female-dominated industry. There are not very many male sonographers that I have ever met. At least in Dallas, it's heavy female, high, like I'd say, at least at a minimum, probably 80% female.
Have you
Dominated
ran into
industry.
any arrogant doctors that you would misrepresent their idea as mansplaining to you?
Oh, all the time.
Okay,
right.
there we go, right there. That's my point. That has nothing to do with gender.
I have a
It
question
has
real
everything to
quick
do with
for
just-
Georgia. So in your work environment, Georgia, you said sonography is predominantly a female role?
Yes, I
And-
mean, the majority of people that I've encountered that are sonographers, and when I was in school, and my professors, all female.
Okay.
It's
And
very females.
do you
There
think-
is one. Let's see. I work at one of the largest hospitals in Dallas, and there is one male on staff.
Mhm. And do you think it's because perhaps a male wouldn't be able to have that dexterity or delicate touch for that job?
No, I don't. I don't know exactly why it is. I don't think it's that because the men I have worked with have been very good,
Mm-hmm.
very good at it. You know,
Well, I think that has everything to do with the
only
professionalism that
limitation-
they have being in that hospital. Go ahead.
Oh, and men are very professional. The only limitation that I have seen for men is if they are doing an internal exam on a female, they need a chaperone. Now, I don't need a chaperone for that exam, but a man does for his own protection.
So would you think
As
then
well
that
as
would be a good reason why males just don't really get into that?
No, I don't think no. 'Cause
Okay.
it's easy to
Can you
find a
think of
chaperone in a
anything
hospital.
why it
It's
would
not.
be?
I don't know why men don't. It's a good profession. It's a good career. It
Mhm.
It's at least in North Texas, it's easy to find a job, and it pays well. There's a
I might get
variety
into it then.
of shift times available. So you're not you don't have to be locked in a 9 to 5 if you don't want to be. It's different it does not get boring. It will be different every day. And I've worked with people who've been sonographers for more than 20 years that say they are challenged every day. So it's a good profession.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. I never thought of it that way. I know, there's that stereotype of the male nurse, or they call them the nurse, which is, kind of that derogatory term. But like when I heard that, it kind of made sense as far as that we were talking about the same idea where
What's in the word, right?
you have to have
nursing.
you have to have they call it bedside manner. You have to have that caring touch, that type of nurturing ability, because you're soothing people. They're in pain. They're not comfortable.
Well, compassion is on the traditional male feminine traits. Compassion is considered to be a traditional feminine trait.
Really interesting. Now, see, that's really
and these traits are
why
stereotypes.
would
I don't
there be
agree with
more
these.
male doctors than traditionally,
yeah.
and more female nurses.
I
mean, now there are a good share of female doctors and a good share of male nurses, but there are a lot more male doctors that I run into.
Well, would you
Female.
consider nursing to be just a more feminine, like just the actual act of nursing is feminine versus where a doctor, he diagnoses, right? And then the nurses are the ones that actually do like most of the actual work, right?
Maintaining the household.
Yeah, other than the
Pretty
surgery.
much.
Doctors provide patients for the nurses to take care of them.
He's smiling right now. He's smiling to himself for that. He's got this fucking smirk on his face.
I maybe so. I mean, maybe when you're talking about nursing, especially, it is very nurturing. Although I'm in healthcare, I'm not with a patient very long. Like usually, the longest I'm with someone is 30 or 45 minutes, and then I see the next person.
We talked a while back, and you said, so if you're in a work environment, now let's get out of the hospital environment. Let's go into the boardroom. Let's go into that. Let's say it's a marketing firm or something, just so I can paint the picture. And you're at the table, and all of a sudden someone says something, whether it's snarky. If it's a male, it's, oh, we should listen to him. If it's from a female, it's, well, she's being a bitch right now, and shut her up.
Absolutely, yeah, that happens, I think, frequently.
And I agree with that.
With someone,
guys can
and
get away with a
they're
lot
considered to be
more
a
what
bitch.
they say than.
But why
and be
do you think
considered.
that is, though?
That's what I'm trying to get to. That's what I can't figure out.
The
just
other
yet.
males are afraid to challenge.
Ooh,
That's what it is.
interesting.
Insecurities all the way.
Interesting.
Interesting.
Just a big room of small
Been there,
penises.
done it. I don't react to either.
You don't. Just apathy.
Just like, you want to be a dick? You want to be a
Okay.
dick? Okay.
Well, sure,
be a dick.
but if they're challenged by another man, are they not still insecure?
Oh, well, give me the scenario then. Because if it's something where somebody just stands up and flexes or spreads and then wants to bitch and moan
Well, you have a
about
guy with a great
something-
idea, right? Like he was saying it, but then when like a woman brings it up, oh, she's just
Oh,
bitching,
that was
or
a
she
different
doesn't know what
topic
she's talking
because
about.
you said-
Okay.
What did you say?
So I was saying,
originally?
like, so
Not that it was a great idea.
If it came from
Oh, I'm
the
sorry.
two different types of people,
Yeah.
it would be looked at in a
but
completely
depending
different
on
way.
what is the actual
So let's say the statement.
proposal.
Let's say the statement is, Gary's got a small dick. And that kind of talk happens in a corporate environment, right? So if a
Fucking
guy
Gary.
said,
Does it?
Gary's got, I'm sure, Gary's got a
Sorry,
small
Gary.
dick, they'd be like, well, maybe Gary does have a small dick. But if, a woman's like, Gary's got a
Okay,
small
fair
dick,
point there.
all of a sudden they'd be like,
okay.
wow, what a
But
bitch. Why would you fucking
If it's a
say
good
that?
idea, it's actually
Not
up
only
revenue
that,
over
they
a quarter.
bring up a scenario of why she was saying that. Oh, she must really love him. And
Oh, yeah. Yeah. How would you know,
See, there's-
Allison? How would you know, you
Exactly.
slut?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because if you said something against a man, well, it must be, oh, she desires him, and he's rejected her.
Yeah. I'm
When it
seeing
could-
that
when
scenario.
it actually could have been the exact opposite.
Yeah, of course. I'm seeing that scenario
That happens
all the time.
all the time. I've seen it. I have friends who have been in it. That's
So here's an interesting question. Where do you think you find in the profession or in the professional field the most toxicity? I think strip clubs got to be up there, right?
Oh yeah.
By far.
I think clubs in general.
Just clubs in
Although
general.
those
Yeah.
women are kinda
Nightclubs, dude.
getting
Oh,
what
absolutely.
they ask for. I mean, they make a lot of money off that.
But and that was my whole point was
And the
because
draw
when,
is-
when you have what's the fucking word I'm looking for? The
Sense?
incentive. When you have the incentive. Thank you, dickhead. Allison, that wasn't very nice. When you have the
Shut up, Karen.
when you have the incentive
Yeah.
of money, people will sacrifice who they are.
Sure.
They'll sacrifice their
Yeah.
goals. They'll sacrifice their ambitions, their morals to
Depending
reach
on
that
a
standard.
bunch of variables.
Yeah.
Sure. But I mean, that's what I think of the nightclub, like you said, strip clubs. Or what comes to mind for you, Anthony?
For like most
Yeah,
toxic
I think
female
those
environments.
women are
Or either
are
or.
ready for what they're getting.
Well, I mean, I think that's just it goes back to entertainment. So I mean, women are the draw, right? So you go to clubs and they let more women in, but they're very specific about the kind of women that they let in. You know, they want women who are, you know, dressed scantily, attractive. They'll let fewer men in, but you know, sex sells, and predominantly
Oh, at
it's
a nightclub?
woman's sex that sells, not a man. Like you see this in movies, you'll see, you know, women in their bras, you'll see boobs more than you see, you know, dudes without their shirts off and things like that, on average.
Sure.
Well, okay, so even on a something similar but different scale. For instance, if you want to have a successful bar
Mhm.
that lasts for years, make it a bar where women are comfortable coming into and hanging out and being alone. You will have a successful bar because then men will come in there with money to spend on those women.
You call it the rape
But if
whistle.
women are not comfortable and you've only got about 5 women in there and a bunch of guys, that bar's not going to last very long.
Okay. That's fair. But what's the whole point of the nightclub scene in the first place? It's not for people to just go and have a good time and enjoy themselves. The whole concept
Well, I don't
is...
know, I think sometimes
I know. You gave me that weird look, but what is the majority?
Isn't it?
What
Isn't
happens?
that the whole point?
Hold on.
Okay. Seriously.
Let me ask
Let
you
your
do
hair
you-
down,
do you
Right,
think,
right. And with
Can I ask George a
drinks like
question?
sex on the... Yeah, go ahead.
Do you think men enjoy drinking more than women do, or do you think men drink more in general than women do, on average?
That's going to take years of
Gosh, I
study.
don't know.
Well, I mean, it's just this is all hypothetical. I mean, we all really
I think
have the
we
numbers
both
for
do.
this,
I
but like,
we all do.
you never hear that
I
women
don't
just want to go to the
know.
club and
I think
dance,
it
that men
seems
just
to
want to
be
get
more,
wasted.
More expected of men to be able to not only to drink, but
Yeah.
to be able to know their limits and hold it well, and even push their limits and still hold it well. It's not as expected of women.
Right. So you think it's more socially acceptable for a man to get drunk versus
No, I
only
don't
getting
think-
drunk?
No, I think what she was
Yes,
saying
if
is
he can
that
handle himself.
it's
Okay.
more typical for the
Well-
man to push himself
Well, right.
over the limit
Yeah.
than the female because the female will recognize the limit.
Okay.
Well, I think it's more acceptable for a man to push the limit and drink too much, but
Why is that?
all the while he's still expected to be able to handle it and not be
Whiskey dick.
obnoxious and be able to get himself home safely and
A man who's responsible for himself and is in control.
But that also shows a survival technique. And I've done a study about this beforehand where people that
That involve drinking.
No, well, yeah, of course. So the idea is drinking is toxic in general.
Yeah,
We're on
yeah.
the subject of toxicity.
Yeah.
We'll talk about the body, the toxicity for the body. That is alcohol. It's a poison. But when someone poisons themselves and they have the awareness that they're poisoning themselves for a specific reason, whatever it might be, whether it's self-medication or trying to have a good time or whatever it might be, understanding the limit and understanding how to keep that one's faculties and to get home safe, how to help other people be safe, that is an endearing concept and quality that shows that you're a
leadership.
survival within the tribe. Exactly.
Resilience.
Correct. That is a survival mechanism.
Sure.
When people don't have that,
But do you consider that more of a masculine trait?
well, I mean, it's the same thing. I look back in the Neanderthal days where people did the same thing with like mushrooms, for example. I'm sure there were people that got all fucked up and they realized like
Ate too many.
this guy
Yeah.
ate too many. Can he handle himself? Can she handle herself? And it was not just about that moment of who can handle what. It's how can they function within the tribe and not even harm us. Like, that would be the first thing. Like
Yeah.
Bob's freaking out.
Yeah.
Is he going to murder us right now?
Right.
And so those are the big questions. So if you like take all the stuff away and look at it from an objective standpoint, that's what we're talking about.
Yeah. Gender aside.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. This is not even
Sure.
a gender
You know.
concept anymore. This is just the toxicity part alone.
interesting.
I don't know where I went from there, but that was. Now I'm smirking. So I want to throw some percentages real quick. When we were talking about the transgendered concept, male from female, now we get into the concept of the race part. Now this is really interesting.
Okay.
So we just discussed male going from male to female, female to male, but now when you incorporate the race, now we're having a real issue, because the African American, if it goes from male to female, and is African American, has the propensity to have more fatality. Over the last
from male to female,
as an African American,
Like from the
as
surgery?
an African American.
yes.
And what is the fatality from?
So, well, just in general, just for transgendered fatalities, there have been 22 murders in 2015, 23 murders in 2016, and 28 murders in 2017.
Where are the
So-
locations?
so far
is
we're
it
at-
across the board.
just across the board. And so far, I think we're at 21, and it's 2019. It's what we're in February. Yeah. And it's really interesting. And like, that's a real scary concept. I don't care who you are or what goes on. Nobody deserves shit like that. And let's go back to like the lynchings that have happened. This was,
Right.
and I remember this when I was like 12 or 13, I believe. I was over at my mama's house hearing that on the news. This
Right.
guy got dragged. Like that shit's still,
Yeah,
it was still
that's-
going
that's
on.
fucked up.
But, and I think I get it though. I think I understand
Well,
it.
the question of that number is: does it tie in like prostitution and things like
That's
that?
what I was getting at.
Okay.
Was where when this happens, you have to assume it's the hardest thing to find a partner, because it's not a socially acceptable concept in the first place.
Yeah, it's very
But now
taboo.
think about when you have to hide that fact,
Yeah.
and then people get involved, or whether feelings were involved, that person feels completely insecure with their sexuality now, and I think that's where the violence occurs.
Wow.
That's a fucking
Okay.
sad thing to think about, but that's what it's starting to get to, in my opinion.
But is it?
That makes sense, though. I mean, it completely makes sense.
What were you gonna say?
That makes sense.
No.
Oh,
sorry,
sorry.
Anthony.
Is it male to
Partner
female or female to male? Like who? The murder rate, is it more towards men to women or women to men?
Gotta be men to women.
Men to women.
Okay.
Because now think about
So that just falls under violence towards women.
Well,
though,
if we
in general.
if we just talked about,
Yeah.
let's go back to the chart. If there's more aggressiveness on just the non-transgender heterosexual male, obviously that's going to be the indication
Yeah.
of what the crime's going to be. I mean, I think if you had a female that had that experience, because let's talk about a double standard in society.
Yeah.
It's not okay for a man to be gay if he
Right.
doesn't know he's gay, but it's totally okay for a woman to be straight
Right.
and still love
Yeah.
boobs and tits and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So
Right.
that's the concept.
Okay.
So if it's a female and a female meets a male to a female,
Right.
obviously there's going to be something there where
Yeah.
it's not going to be that traditionally violent or upsetting. Maybe there is some bad blood,
Right.
but when he goes to the other side of the equation, that's what I start to see, all these hate crimes and these atrocities. And so I definitely feel like that has to be addressed. And again, like me having to pull my own head out my ass and kind of be less ignorant and realize that this is an actual occurrence. Things are happening like this even right now as we speak.
Absolutely.
And that's a fucked up thing, dude. Sorry, I didn't mean to get
who do
everybody
we
down.
blame? Society? I vote
No,
society.
Well,
yeah.
okay.
No, I vote society too.
What's your vote,
I'm
Austin?
not going to get all.
But it goes back to that, like you were saying earlier. With,
I'm not gonna get political.
Insecurities. So, like, a man picks up a prostitute and finds out that the woman
Yeah.
he picked up
Yeah.
wasn't what he was expecting.
like a truck driver or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then that's where the violence comes
Mm-hmm.
in.
Well, see, that's what I'm thinking too. Is exactly, or someone that didn't tell someone, and maybe they've been dating for a little while, and then that person finds out they really should have taken shit.
And then I had to think that would be the pandering as well. Like you know, going towards places where it is dark alleys and dark lighting and things that they don't want to be seen.
Yeah, and
or
that's
fuck. But going back to your
Harry
question, David, I think the real problem is the lack of education. I've always believed that if we can educate our community and the people around, we'll be more adept and apt to make smarter.
When we come across
decisions.
scenarios that we're not familiar with.
We're not making fight or flight or emotional decisions at that point.
Right.
It's more rationalized, understood, logical concepts.
tend to freak out and hate things they don't understand.
Big time.
Exactly.
Big
Yeah.
time.
It's a knee-jerk reaction.
Absolutely. What are your thoughts, Georgia?
I think it's interesting that there are higher percentage of fatalities in the Afro-American race. I don't know why that would be, because I would think that'd be kind of across the board.
Well, okay, so of the 21 deaths recorded this year, 19 have been transgendered people of color. And that's according to the Gay and Lesbian Alliance Against Defamation.
Oh, is that where you get your numbers from?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, where are the other numbers?
That was from a CBS article.
Oh, okay. So that was just specifically focusing on the African American group.
I think so, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I think the Latinas come in second.
Okay.
At least just from
Okay.
what I've seen. And I've looked at things from like Vice,
Mhm.
Vice News, and other concepts.
Okay, so Austin, you were saying you think this is related to education levels?
I think crimes, like crimes of passion, emotional crimes, yes, because people they're not aware and they feel like they're duped and they put themselves in bad situations and I don't feel like they prepared themselves of how to solve the problem in the first place without using violence. I mean, I was like that for when I was
Right.
a kid, I had a real bad anger problem. And I had to kind of sit myself down and ask myself why. And I think that I'll just use that as an example. If you can ask yourself why you're going to react this way, even it's okay to have that emotion.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's bad to not, or I'm not saying it's bad to have that emotion in general. Those emotions are just what we have, in like that's who we are as an individual. It's what you do with those emotions. That's the real task,
Yeah.
and that's what we're not teaching everybody.
Right.
You're teaching them it's unnatural to have that emotion, and so when you
Yeah.
have that emotion, you get more afraid,
Yeah.
and you get
But
more.
there's that word though, unnatural. So I think
Exactly.
a lot of that
Right.
hate and violence towards the transgender community comes from the fact that a lot of like right wingers they fear for the family unit, like it's gonna
Right.
end mankind or society's gonna crumble because you have these group of people who don't fit that traditional mold, and they're not. I mean, you don't have to have children.
Well, I mean,
and transgender
Family
people
Guy-
can't, biologically they can adopt, and that's that's great. But these people are so caught up with their traditions and their religion that they can't see past that they think it's an abomination.
Right.
And it's incredibly just messed up and outdated. It's
Too many filters.
and it goes back to
Oh,
not
very
understanding.
outdated.
Family Guy is one of my favorite episode because Seth MacFarlane, when I say he writes these jokes that really start showing this is what you thought 8 years ago. Look what's happening now. And I bring up the character Quagmire, where Quagmire's father was like this decorated war hero from the Navy,
Yeah.
but then tells Quagmire that he wants to be a woman. And Quagmire is just like, oh fuck, just please be gay. and that's the concept now. It's like things have progressed in such a
Right.
really crazy fast rate that we're not even catching up on things that we never liked in the first place. So now it's just kind of snowballing on us. And so I think it's a good thing, though, deep down.
Yeah.
Because the other thing that is really fascinating, just a transgendered individual alone,
Yeah.
someone that feels like they are of the opposite sex, this is not like the first time this has ever happened in society. If
been
you go
around.
way back to the Hindus,
Yeah.
they had a word for it. And I forget what the word is, but it's about when the spirit traveled when it died.
Yeah.
It didn't really understand the male or female capacity. It just had a blend of both.
Okay.
And then as it traveled through, it would get into another body, and then it would be born as a man but want to be a woman.
Okay.
It's
And so
interesting
that's
that
how
you bring
they-
up that blend of both.
Mhm.
Are you not a blend of both? Are you not? Am I
Well,
not?
I mean, that's the other thing too.
That's
It's like
actually one
when
way
we
to-
start,
Yeah, absolutely.
we start talking about
But there is,
compassion
I
and
think it's Samoan culture. There's a third sex. There might be another one. I forget. But biologically it's a male, but they identify as a female, and that's recognized by the society, and they're actually considered to be, important, and they're all often revered or treated with much more respect than what trans people here, or even transvestites here in America, would be treated.
okay. Hey, so Georgia,
Yes.
I want to ask you just a couple questions.
Okay.
What would you name your dominant female traits? And let's just go with 3.
With 3 dominant. Well, I would say compassion for people
Okay.
would be one, a strong one. Wanting to be very friendly and get along.
Okay.
And, let me think of a good one. This is tough, Austin.
Hey, putting you on the spot.
Probably nurturing. Even though I don't
Okay.
have children, I think I'm a nurturing
Now I want you to tell me your top 3 male traits.
male trait. I
Your
would say
masculine,
I'm assertive. I make decisions about goals in my life, and I stick to it. This is one. I think I shoot. I don't sound like it right now, but I think when I speak my mind, I speak pretty straight about it. And I've heard that a lot of women don't.
So we call that blunt.
Bluntness.
I guess so. Yes.
All right, Anthony.
I
Same question.
What am I starting with? My feminine traits?
You're gonna start with your male traits and then go to the
male
female.
traits?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm very blunt. That goes both ways. Some people respect that, others not so much. They misinterpret that as me just being an asshole. I suppose stoic, but I don't mean that in a negative way. I think it's important that, people are able to control their emotions and not, they get upset or flustered, especially in the workplace. You don't want to show that, because then people are unsettled by that. They don't know whether or not they can rely on you. And so stoicism in general is often considered to be a toxic masculine trait because, people assume that you're a man, you can't show your emotions. And that's not entirely true, but it's more about controlling your emotions. So think like Spock or something like that. So then the other one would be probably...
I know that third
one's tough.
That third one's tough, isn't it?
It is. I don't really because I don't typically look at myself that way either way. Because, I try to be assertive. I try to be...
That doesn't sound like assertive.
Well, there we go. Did you see uncertainty?
I try to be very assertive.
I try to be assertive.
Man, I'm on the spot
do we
here.
call that a transgender trait?
Maybe.
Well, the whole point... We'll get to the point at the end.
Let's see, I got number three.
Okay, so...
I don't know. What do you think?
It's not
Off
my,
the bat.
I'm not judging you. This is you, buddy. You gotta diagnose yourself.
Okay.
It's interesting. It's interesting to now.
I'm gonna move on to the feminine.
How
ones.
many
I'll get back to
words
that
do we
one.
have in the English dictionary?
We have plenty. And I can't think of one.
Right.
Yeah.
This is really
But
interesting.
you think of feminine traits as those that would do to being a mother.
Well, I'm gonna remove the gender thing from it. I'm just gonna
Okay.
go with 3 traits that define me. So
Okay.
I feel that I am very compassionate.
You got blunt and stoic so far.
Blunt, stoic, compassionate,
You want to put
patient.
Patient. You
I
wanna put-
think that falls under that. We'll go with the masculine.
All right.
So patient.
All right. And on the
I am very patient.
and your feminine qualities.
Compassionate,
Okay.
introspective, and sensitive. But I feel like that's a blanket term. But when I say sensitive, I don't mean everything makes me cry, but rather
Interesting.
that I feel like intuitive. So there we go, intuitive.
Sensitive, intuitive.
Yeah.
Okay. David, you're up, bud.
Okay, so I've had some time to ruminate.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thanks, Austin.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
And I think initially the way I want to answer this is what I feel I got from my mom, what I feel I got from my dad.
Okay.
Okay? So from my mom, I feel like I've gotten my sensitivity, my creativity,
Ooh, good one. I should have said that.
and my dreamer aspect, if you will.
Nice.
Right?
Nice.
My imagination.
Nice.
You said that
let's
came
say.
from your mother?
I think so.
Okay.
I just heard a drop
No,
from
my mom was
Georgia.
hers.
And then from my dad.
Sorry. From
Pop the other one, why don't you?
From your dad.
Yeah.
So from my dad, then, top one would be sense of a provider
Okay.
Okay.
in that aspect. If I ever find myself in that situation. Secondly, would be self-driven. Thirdly, passionate about everything, anything that I'm driven about. That I truly got from my dad.
That's awesome.
That was a good answer.
I had time
I
to think
tend to
about it.
think
I should have
a
opened with that for
dreamer
my
as
parents.
more of a male characteristic. than a
We'll
female.
get there. We'll get
Wasn't
there.
that the question? What are your best
Yeah,
female?
yeah.
I answered that.
All right, so I'll go with my
Male, answer
my 3 male characteristics.
Your beard.
No.
I'm just kidding.
No. Introspective. Introspection. The ability to stay quiet.
That actually
around
falls under feminine.
anything. Again, this is
Yeah.
what we interpret
Yeah.
as what we
Sure.
believe. So I would say, yeah, my introspection's definitely up there. Passion. Passion. I'll get anything done. Whatever I put my mind to, I will get it done.
doer.
I will do it, no question. And the third is a great listener. I think being a great listener is that male characteristic. I really think so. But it's only when I listen, and that's the caveat. I think I'm a good listener, but it's only when I'm listening. It's not like I listen all the time. Right. It's only when I associate when I'm listening.
Okay.
For the female characteristics, intuitive. Holy shit, the sensitivity and intuition is like fucking skyrocketed for me. That's why I don't like to touch people. Sometimes if I touch people, I can feel something and I don't like it. And I like to stay away from that. I have my own personal bubble.
Right.
I'm not a nurturer, put it that way. But I would definitely say I tend to other people's needs if they ask. I'm not going to do it unless they ask. But, I will definitely be there. So I call that loyalty.
Okay.
Loyalty. And then the third, you're right, the third one's the toughest. Being a loving creature. I think that's compassionate. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, so I got to throw the compassion there.
Or empathy as well.
Empathy. Yeah,
all
definitely
of you
empathy. Both. Yeah. So those are mine. Anyways, it's really interesting, and I encourage everybody with your friends and if you have some downtime to play this game with them and kind of figure out
feel out their duality.
what goes on, because I think what you'll find right in the middle between those three male and female characteristics are what we all kind of have. And I think that's something to definitely look at.
Yeah. So we're all part of this grand Venn diagram.
Yeah, it's genderless.
Yeah. Other than that, that's pretty much all I got. We're at an hour.
Are we? I think we should wrap it up now.
You want to? Georgia, do you have anything else to say?
I'm good.
What were you going to say, dude?
Great talking to
Any
y'all
viewers
guys.
that want to say anything? Do we?
It's too late right now,
is it too
but
late? Okay.
they'll definitely be able to listen to it.
I have something to say.
Yeah.
Sure, go ahead.
Really like talking to you guys again.
Oh, this is great
thank
talking
you.
to you, too. We're going to say, Dave.
I just want to say one thing. I found in my experience that when you truly accept somebody for exactly who they are, when you meet them and the
I like it, like, our
situation they find themselves in life and accept them for who they are, that's when you see an individual become or begin to become the most greatest
that version of themselves.
Themselves.
Absolutely.
I've seen that. And that's what I would encourage everybody to do.
Absolutely.
Accept people for
Awesome.
who they are.
That's beautiful.
That's a good closing statement.
That is.
All right.
That is.
Well, thank you so much for listening. You could catch us on, I guess, YouTube, Twitch, although that's fucking failing.
Check in with
big
us.
time.
It's
Facebook is the best part, though. Next time, feel free to call in 469-200-8812, or you can Skype in as well. We can fit that in. That's all I've got.
Surprise us.
Night, guys.
Good night.
Night, Georgia.
Good night. Good night.
My friends, I stand before you to tell a truth most dire. There lurks a traitor in our midst who hath invoked the captain's ire. Don't deserve no mercy, we ought to shoot him with a gun, but I